The lightweight picture got a little bit clearer after Arman Tsarukyan spoke up about not being Ilia Topuria's next opponent. Right after that, fans in the MMA community came after Ilia, accusing him of ducking the toughest and most deserving contender in the lightweight division, especially since Arman was already the backup fighter for UFC 317. That's exactly what Daniel Cormier brought up on the latest episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. He pushed back on the idea that the UFC is protecting Topuria, saying that the real reason Arman isn't next is because of what happened when Paddy Pimblett stormed into the cage and faced off with El Matador after his destructive KO of Charles Oliveira. According to DC, there's no way to backtrack now. With all the hype and attention that moment created, Topuria versus Paddy has become the fight to make. DC's theory has already been debunked because just hours after his episode, it was confirmed that Ilia Topuria will be facing Justin Gaethje next. More on that in a bit. DC argued that the UFC couldn't possibly pass up an Ilia versus Paddy matchup given all the hype it's generated, but the truth is the promotion has other plans and isn't prioritizing that fight at all. We'll get into the reasoning behind this move and why the UFC seems to have other plans in just a few minutes. Let's dive into what DC had to say.
This is why I don't think that the UFC, they're not protecting him. They're not protecting him. I just think that sometimes you go down a path, Chael, that you get so far down that path, you can't reverse it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I get what Dana said. I would have never even put him in the cage. I get that, but he was in the cage. He was there. And guess what? Every person that watched, and a lot of them did, saw him in that cage with Ilia Topuria. You can't reverse that. That's why, if he does get the title fight, that'll be the only reason. I don't think they're saying like, hey, let's knowingly put him in a fight that we feel is a better matchup for him to make sure that our shining star stays bright, right? Let's polish him up. I don't think that's the case. I just think that sometimes you go so far and you're like, how do I get out of this?
Magomed Ankalaev just made it clear he's open to fighting Khamzat Chimaev if the newly crowned champ ever makes the jump to 205, something the Chechen has hinted at numerous times. Ankalaev admitted that a move to heavyweight is very likely for him down the line, but not just yet. For now, he made it clear that anyone who wants to test themselves at 205 will find the door wide open. That confidence immediately drew comparisons to Islam Makhachev, who recently got backlash for his own comments on a potential fight with Khamzat. While Islam hinted that he might be down for a fight, his first reaction was to avoid creating tension between their people and teams, which fans saw as backpedaling. The MMA community quickly sided with Ankalaev, praising him as the kind of proud, fearless champion who represents what a champ should be. At the same time, it's worth remembering that in the Caucasus culture, respect and unity matter a lot. So Islam's cautious stance also has a real reason behind it. But let's not forget, this all started when Khamzat himself was the first to throw out the idea and call out Islam to take his pound-for-pound ranking. Now let's get into Ankalaev's thoughts on a potential fight with Chimaev, as well as his stance on a rematch with Alex Pereira.
Khamzat допускал переход 63. В теории допускаешь вот такой поединок против Khamzata?
Не знаю, я пока на этом дивизионе, если кто-то захочет перейти, осмотрит мой пояс, я всегда говорю добро пожаловать, нету проблем. Если перейдет, нету проблем.
Каким ты видишь повторный реванш, как он пройдет?
Ну, я думаю, реванш пойдет намного легче, чем первый бой, так как статистика говорит всегда, реванши со мной выходить, это очень опасно. Я думаю, мы подтвердим то же самое, что со мной не стоит выходить на реванш.
Может быть, в этот раз вообще не стоит пытаться перевести Алекса, потому что ты, в принципе, перебивал ее стойки.
Все может быть. Я буду делать все, чтобы доминировать. Если бороться, надо будет бороться, биться стойки. Я думаю, у нас не будет проблем нигде. Да, вполне возможно, что я не буду его переводить.
Fight fans, the moment we've all been waiting for is finally here. Ever since Arman Tsarukyan revealed he's not next in line to face Ilia Topuria, the speculation machine went into overdrive about who the lightweight champ would defend his belt against first. And now, Álvaro Colmenero has struck again with the scoop everyone's been waiting for. For those who don't know, Colmenero is one of the most trusted voices in Spanish combat sports journalism thanks to his direct access to UFC events and fighters. His work as director of ABC UFC MMA, and as a commentator for Eurosport's UFC coverage, he has connections few others can match. He's basically the Spanish version of Ariel Helwani, but less annoying maybe. Alvaro has a history of breaking every single Topuria fight before official announcements, including the UFC 317 showdown with Charles Oliveira, so when he reports, it's coming straight from the source, not speculation. On his latest YouTube show, he and his source dropped the big news. Ilia Topuria is set to face Justin Gaethje in January at UFC 324. Apparently, the UFC delayed Topuria's next fight until 2026 because of the Paramount deal, wanting to build him up instead of throwing him into a high-risk matchup. Facing Gaethje, who's nearing the end of his career, is seen as a stylistically favorable matchup for El Matador. The UFC has a long history of matching their stars with out-of-prime veterans to build momentum. No disrespect to Justin, who's a legend, but this is a perfect way to keep Topuria's rise unstoppable while giving the fans a big-name fight.
Elegido va a ser Justin Gaethje.
The upcoming opponent is going to be Justin Gaethje. Ilia Topuria is one of the biggest faces in the UFC right now, alongside Khamzat Chimaev, and everything points to him returning at the start of 2026. The UFC is saving him for January because December historically isn't a major card. Right now, all indications are that Topuria's next challenge is Justin Gaethje. That's the fight they want to make first, giving Topuria a huge platform to start the year. Of course, other names like Paddy Pimblett or Arman Tsarukyan are in the mix, but Gaethje is the most likely. The UFC wants to start 2026 with a bang. Arman Tsarukyan is the biggest threat to El Matador in the division, but they're not rushing that fight yet. They want to build the hype and make sure El Matador is ready for someone of that level. As for the money fight with Paddy Pimblett, that's probably coming later in 2026, once the timing is perfect. So mark it down. It looks like Topuria versus Gaethje in January 2026, and it's set to be one of the biggest matchups in the lightweight division. End quote. Now, the big question for fight fans, how do you see this matchup playing out stylistically? On paper, most expect a striking battle, but what if El Matador decides to lean on his grappling skills, the same grappling that many MMA fans tend to doubt compared to others in the division? Joe Rogan actually weighed in on this exact topic when breaking down Topuria face to face, pointing out how people often underestimate his ground game simply because he's so lethal on the feet.
When people see a guy who can strike like you do, they kind of forget about the ground game. You know, they forget that your ground game is very elite too. You know, which is really interesting because you tend to put people in categories of danger, but with you, it's all danger. Like you have a very well balanced game, you know, which is unusual.
That's it from MMA Psycho. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for daily MMA news.